Welcome.
Welcome.
Oh, okay, thank you. I wanted some kind of a response here from one of you.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
That was rude. I'm welcoming you guys, and you're supposed to say thank you for having me.
I expected more from you, honestly.
I expected more from you.
I'm not sure that I should be thanking you. I feel like I'm a regular on this.
Just because you've
In
been
my
on it every
house.
time.
Thank
In
you.
my house.
I am sort of a regular in your house.
And you should thank me. It's
Thank you
customary.
for your gracious hosting.
Thank you.
That's right. Humility, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Thank
Humility.
you for your humility, James Major. Humiliating James Major.
Right.
That's right.
Scott,
That's what they call me.
we are excited to be here on your podcast.
Okay, podcast.
Podcast.
Yes.
That's what this is.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Graham Carlson, for your lovely shirt.
Hey, you're welcome.
The quick, I will. Okay, let me say this. That fox is orange,
Yeah, it's a quick
The
brown
shirt
fox
Yeah.
is brown.
jumping over the lazy dog.
but
But
that
like,
fox is not brown,
the fox is definitely an orange. Like an autumn orange?
as is evidenced by. Thank you, Jimmy, pointing out the shirt is brown.
Right, so
Right.
the contrast.
The sentence could be the quick orange fox jumps over the lazy dog on the
brown shirt. And
The
that's
brown
how you
shirt.
that's how you get
Right.
the W in there, yeah.
Yep. You
And
need
the
the
B.
W.
You need it to get the whole alphabet.
Do you?
It's part of the alphabet.
There's
so
no Z in
yes.
there. There's no Z in there.
Lazy.
Oh man, there is.
Yeah, that's the whole
That's
point.
the whole
Quick
point.
That's the
brown
whole
fox jumps over the
I
lazy
actually,
dog.
I never actually thought about that. That was why that phrase.
This is what
was like-
happens when you're homeschooled. This is
Oh.
this is what happens.
Well, I'm currently at home getting schooled, apparently.
true.
So,
Oh.
wow, that blew my mind.
Yeah, that's why I
That's
wore
every letter of the alphabet?
everyone.
Yeah.
Name a letter.
Everyone.
I'll tell you
L.
the word.
It's
Lazy.
lazy.
A,
Same lazy.
Z,
Lazy.
F.
Fox.
You see, I flipped
Yeah.
it. You thought I was going to say Y, but
I
I
thought.
said F.
No, you tried to
fox.
trick me.
Hold on, there's got to be one. It's not in there.
There's not. There's
All
not.
right.
It's the whole sentence.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna
Q,
come back.
quick.
To this.
J, jump. W, brown.
Brown. Okay. I feel like I had like not a script here, but I had some text, and I'm
So
We're past it. I
today
can't stand it
on
now.
Phasing Player,
Today
we're
on Phasing
discussing
Player.
the quick brown
alphabet.
fox.
the alphabet.
As every letter
Whatever happened to
represented.
thorn? Where's the thorn in that sentence?
It's the TH in.
Yeah, it's not there.
Yeah, I
I
guess
don't
it's
have
not.
it.
What is thorn? What are you? Your quick
It's like
brown.
an old like you know more, Jimmy.
Yeah, so it is like the sound that is the basically, and it is the symbol that is when you see signs or whatever that's like ye old whatever. It's not actually a Y, it's something called thorn, and it's a letter that the English language used to have, but it's a TH sound.
It looks sort of like it's like a line with sort of like a wedge on the sides. Like you know how like you have like the alligator eats the bigger number.
Sure.
Imagine he's eating a 1.
So if
And
you
that's
were to
together.
read, he doth know our pretenses. Doth might have that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's.
And that's
something
where
would
that
say.
like Jimmy was saying, that's where you hear when people are speaking in old time English, they say like ye old bakery.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's like a.
So it's like a I guess
tall,
maybe it's
tall
like a
P.
It's like a P, but the line is longer. But yeah, like ye old. That's not a thing. Like that's
Right. So,
It's-
but
it's
just,
always
just to
been
clarify, you guys keep saying
ye
ye old as though it has thorn in it, but it does not. Because you're saying ye old instead of old English. That's what you're
Right.
telling me.
But here.
what are you looking at there, Graham?
This was the longest lived use. This is the Wikipedia article for thorn.
Okay.
This is the longest lived use, though the substitution of Y for thorn soon became ubiquitous, leading to the common ye, as in ye old curiosity shop. One major reason for this was that Y existed in the printer's type fonts that were imported from Germany or Italy.
Hell yeah.
While thorn did not.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Germany.
So
Type.
the pronunciation of
Quick brown
ye
fox.
old
Curiosity
is new,
shop.
right?
Oh.
So it would be the old curiosity shop,
Oh.
right?
Gotcha.
All right,
Lear-
so
we're
shirt
learning today.
Shirt does not have thorn in it. Sentence, no thorn.
No thorn.
Doesn't count.
Doesn't
not
count.
every letter.
Okay.
Welcome to the Phasing Player podcast for May the 4th. Thank you, Graham.
May the
And
4th be with you.
I knew I could just point at you for long enough and you would eventually say it.
You would eventually Star Wars.
You would eventually
Your
Star Wars.
default reaction when anyone points at you for long enough.
A lovely
No disintegrations.
Star Wars. A lovely licensed video game, board game kind of series.
What? Scott, you need to put on a helmet if you're going to ride that Segway.
I don't think you have. Do you have to wear helmets when you ride Segways?
You're supposed to.
Okay.
It's because if you fall. Like,
Is it the kind
I
of
fell
thing-
off a Segway once real hard. and I
I've never
should've
even
had
ridden a
helmet.
Segway.
Did you die?
No, I did skin up my knee, though, and my work clothes.
That's embarrassing.
Did you hit your head?
No, I did not.
Maybe you don't need a helmet for riding a Segway then.
It's because I broke my fall with my hand.
Okay, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. You shouldn't do
It
that.
was super bloody.
It's crazy how that's like an instinct everyone has when they fall.
Yeah.
But like,
Because you got to protect your brain.
It's
plate.
accepted. Like,
or
you
like
don't do that.
trying to
right?
catch something that you dropped, even if it's like a weight or a knife.
Yeah,
Like-
yeah, a knife. You like drop a sharp knife, right? You should lift your
Yeah.
hands up, step away.
Don't fall on your knife.
Yeah, everyone practice that. If you drop a knife, hands up, step away.
Speaking of Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
we today are talking about licensed games.
We will be, Graham Carlson. We will be talking about that.
the
certainly.
main topic.
Yes, at the end of the show, we will be discussing licensed games. Star Wars, I'm sure, will come up,
It might.
unless I
Probably
can
not.
prevent it from, being a point of conversation.
Yeah, well, good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate the support. But Graham, what have you been up to? I know you've been speaking of Star Wars. I know the Star Wars Imperial Assault World Championships.
Yeah, so
happened.
I'm a big fan of FFG games in general, which we'll talk about later. But this week is the Star Wars World Championships for all of their Star Wars licensed games.
Oh, so it's all of them, not just Imperial.
All of them.
Okay.
So Star Wars Destiny is a card game. Imperial Assault is a board game. And then there's like 10
X-Wing.
more. X-Wing,
Yeah.
Armada. These are all games. And they're all Star Wars, and they're all owned by FFG. And so then they just have a big tournament. They used to have all of their games at one big FFG Worlds. And then they had too many games. So then they split off and they did all the Star Wars ones the first weekend in May. Because it's close to May the 4th. And then they're going to do the rest of their games
I don't
all in
understand
November.
that. I don't understand that.
May the 4th be with you.
They say force though, right? In the movies?
Yeah, but it's like, what
Common
if...
misconception.
What
They say
what
They
if
say fourth.
Yeah,
Okay.
but what if like their tongue also got kind of cut off maybe by a lightsaber? That happens all the time in the Star Wars movies.
Did it ever?
Yeah.
Who?
Jabba.
Jabba?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
He got
I'm pretty
blown-
sure.
He got blown up.
I'm pretty.
blown
Yeah,
up.
and his tongue got blown up first, and then he said, "May
Did
the
it?
4th be with you."
In other news, I picked up Stardew Valley this week.
Stardew Valley.
Which is a computer game where you have a homestead and you farm to your heart's content. And it's just a chill game that's super chill. It was basically developed by one dude, and it's amazingly good for that. It's got 8-bit graphics. I played it a lot a couple years ago when my roommate had it. Then I moved, so my roommate did not move, so I do not have said roommate anymore. So I bought it for myself this week.
So you have played it before?
I have played it before.
Did you ever play any of the Harvest Moon games?
I did not.
Okay. They mostly suck now. They're like super, super cartoony and really like cheesy. Really like bad too. They
Sure.
are
They didn't age well.
low quality.
That's what you're telling me.
The older games are great, and Stardew Valley is basically that, but
Spiritual successor to Earthbound or whatever you're talking about.
Yeah, Graham
Harvest
Carlson,
Moon.
excellent listener.
more. Yeah,
Harvest Moon.
Harvest Moon.
Harvest Moon. Yeah.
I used to get Harvest Moon and Earthbound confused, and so
very
then I would play I know, because I never played either game, right? So then the only reason I knew that either of them existed was from other people telling me stories, and I would play Super Smash Bros. And be like, I'm playing as Ness, the kid from Harvest Moon, and they're like, that's not true. That's not true. Why would you need PK Fire on a farm, Graham?
Right.
You don't. You don't need that.
Get rid of
That
the
is
weeds.
such an odd mix-up. Harvest Moon and
very weird.
Earthbound.
Very
I
weird.
love it.
I guess because Moon and Earth are related.
Loosely.
Right.
Loosely related.
Harvest and Bound. I guess I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
so
know. That's funny. I like that though. That
you're
connection.
welcome. You're welcome.
Harvest Moon cross Earthbound coming up.
Right,
I hope.
right.
I hope
it's going to be called Earth Moon.
Earth Moon and Fire.
Uh-huh.
It's cool. So you've been playing Stardew Valley again, and they just had an update for that too.
Yeah,
Right.
so now they allow multiplayer among other things, which I
Oh,
want to try with my old roommate. I don't know if you can do it remotely. I've read someone complain that like I can only get it to work on LAN, like local.
Oh, weird.
Which seems not effective because it's a computer game, right? So
That's almost like, how would you play that on LAN? Because you can go to like
Controllers, I
different,
guess.
but I mean, you can
Right.
go to like different places. Does it
Yeah.
do split screen?
I have no idea.
it might be like old school LAN parties where like you brought multiple computers.
Oh wow,
I don't know.
That would be such a bizarre
That's
thing.
just one post that I read somewhere because I didn't read into it that much. So it's probably not true, and you can
It's
probably
gotta
play
be- it's
multiplayer
gotta
like
be
every
online.
more normal game now. And
Right.
It seems really neat. So
Get on your Discord,
Yeah.
talk with your farm bros.
what I don't know is if you have to start a new farm and say like this is a multiplayer farm.
Oh,
I
or
can
if you
ju-
could
or
just
if
bring
I-
people in.
If I put in, let's say 6 hours so far into my farm, can Jimmy just join and be like, "Yo, what up? I'm also your cousin."
Right. I brought some zucchini
Mushrooms.
to.
Right. And then maybe you can go in the mines and like beat up slimes for me, and then I can fish and make us some money off of some cool herrings.
Well, I do own that game, so let's figure out if that. I'm a huge fan
Let's
of
do
I
it.
Stardew Valley,
Let's
so
stop
I also
recording
own
right
that.
now, and we'll just go play it right now.
All right, yeah, guys. Well, thanks for listening, man.
thanks
That
for
was some
listening.
spirited discussion. That was lovely. Star Wars is the best licensed property of all time.
Yeah, true. Fact.
Coincidentally, also the worst.
Yes.
Which is why that's the only one we brought up.
Yep.
Best Wars. All right, yeah. Take care. See ya.
Well, bye. Jimmy, what have you been playing?
I just started a new character in Fallout 4.
Nice.
Maybe
Also a
regrettably.
hot new property.
Also a hot new property. It is okay. I forgot that there are no skills in that game, so you can't be like, I'm going to be a person who's good with energy weapons. You are just okay with everything until you take perks that make you great with things.
Right.
So that's a little underwhelming. I'm not a huge fan of the game anyway, but I am sort of spending the last 24-ish hours playing it.
I don't like it. That's why I didn't sleep last night, and I just.
I
played
did
this
stay
game.
up kind of late playing it.
That's
but,
awesome.
I'm still playing Yakuza 6, which I'm like in that stage where I don't want to finish the game because then it's over. So I'm like maxing out on mini games I don't like.
Yeah.
And yeah, I almost played 2 different games of Twilight Imperium last night, but instead I started
Close.
2 different games of
Almost.
Twilight Imperium because we had someone I've never actually met, but I'm going to call him a buddy anyway because we're Twilight Imperium comrades.
We're
now.
Midwesterners. We're friendly folk.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
The Midwest
You
hospitality.
see somebody, they're a friend.
that's right.
You there?
And
you have legs.
he could not.
Ableist.
He was not able
Sorry.
to start up Tabletop Simulator, or rather, he could start it
Yeah.
up, but it wouldn't load the game. It would
We were
crash.
playing online. To be
We were
clear.
playing
We were
online.
not playing in person.
Got it.
We did
Got
not
it.
set up Twilight Imperium once, get partway through, and then say let's start over.
Right.
Right.
It was
So
on tabletop.
You
Simulator.
know what?
eventually, we encouraged him to go away, and we started a 6-player game. And then it was like 10 o'clock or pushing 10,
And you're like, dude, I gotta build this Fallout 4 character. We got to move.
someone who does not like Twilight Imperium joined the Discord channel and said, "Yo, what up, guys? You want to play PUBG?" And then everyone left to play PUBG. So I picked 2 different races for Twilight Imperium and played 0 rounds of either game.
That being said, because I'm in the same games as you are, that being said, that we played none. I don't know if you've been on our Twilight Imperium Slack channel, appropriately titled the Twilight Zone. It's a good title, I think.
Nice, because it's like a show.
Because it's
but
like the
also
TV
a
show,
game.
and we talk about the TV show mostly.
So it's really not a Twilight Imperium Slack channel at all.
Mostly a Twilight Zone Slack channel. The
That's
80s is like revival, though. It's weird. I don't know.
Nah, it's terrible.
But I've been talking with like 3 people on Slack this morning,
Huh.
just about stuff going on in that game that hasn't quite started yet.
The 7-player game?
Because we all want the
alt-right
7-player one to go. The alt-right game we're kind of pushing aside for right now.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you referred to it as the alt-right game?
I thought
Well-
the 7-player one was the alt-right
No,
game.
the 7-player one is the regular one.
Okay.
And then we have an alt-right game.
Did you Like, are you hitting the Alt button on the keyboard and then right?
No, so
Was it just an
so we have
alt-right
a- we
game,
have a
but
Slack
someone
channel.
had a typo and put in
No,
a T?
we have a Slack channel to talk about. We like to do a lot of kind of backroom chatter. You know, we can,
Backroom chatter.
between games we can talk about. Like, you know, I'm looking at this map and I think you're going to go over here and I don't want you to.
Yeah.
Or can you help me with this thing when we play again?
That seems cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, like half the game takes place between sessions, essentially. But when we started this 6-player game, we decided to make another channel in Discord for posting pictures of the map from that game. Our channel for the first one is just called Board Pictures, and then someone made Board Pictures Alt, which immediately elicited alt-right jokes, and then a bunch of just alt-right comments in that channel. To be clear, parody alt-right comments.
Right.
Totally
I mean,
ironically, yeah.
yeah, I don't want to paint the wrong picture here.
Right.
But there was some good content in that channel. But yeah, Twilight Imperium. Almost played it.
We almost played it. I was looking forward to it all week. I had this plan.
Yeah,
I
me
was
too.
gonna, for the 7-player game, I was gonna be the Arborec tree people, and
trees.
I picked like 4th, and the very first player to pick was like, I'm gonna be the Arborec.
Yep.
All right, well,
And then our 6-player game also.
yeah, they did the same thing.
First guy to pick again.
Yeah.
Also
You picked the
Arborec.
same thing. Same
Picked
thing?
Arborec in both
What
games.
a-
Yeah.
What a. I guess you just wanted to play them trees.
I guess I picked
That's
the
right.
Yin in both games. The Yin Brotherhood. Nice nice Mormons.
I like them.
Yeah, they seem fun.
I just like the idea of like we're gonna go into a combat, but first let me knock on your door and tell you about how great the Brotherhood is.
Uh-huh,
Right.
You want
uh-huh.
to get on this yin.
Yeah, what I want to do before our game is I want to make some Yin Brotherhood brochures. Just like take a like a Mormon brochure,
Right.
and then just edit it all to be like about the Yin Brotherhood, and then just put that in the game and copy and paste it into people whenever I invade them.
Right. Right.
But yeah, Twilight Imperium, close, soon.
Yeah.
Vote on the date poll
Yeah,
that I put up.
I will.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get a game going soon.
What are you playing?
So last night I almost started playing Twilight Imperium
Okay.
with a couple friends of mine, a few friends of mine.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, one of my buddies was having connection issues. I say buddy, I don't really know him. I haven't met him before.
In my mind, he's called Diego, and he's very mysterious.
That is
You
so
have met
insensitive.
him, like, to be clear, right?
No,
You-
he's
okay.
Dan's friend.
Okay.
His name's Andy. I
Okay.
have not met Andy.
Diego.
Diego. Hola.
Okay. So I thought you were joking, but
No. Oh well, I was joking up to that point.
right.
But I have not met Andy.
Okay.
Yeah, he told 2 lies and a truth.
Yes, 2 lies and a truth.
No, that's actually all truth. Anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, afterwards we did play PUBG, which that's kind of since it came out in like October. No, that's not true. It's been out for more than a year. Since I started playing around October, PUBG has been like my standard go-to game. It took over Dota's old position, where I used to play Dota probably 3-4 times a week. Now I play PUBG 3 or 4 times a week, and yeah, that's what I've been playing mostly lately, PUBG. And they just came out with an update, which half the community loves, half the community hates,
Divisive.
as every update for every popular game
That's true.
is. Someone is like, oh, they made the weapon I liked worse, and other people say, hey, they made the weapon I liked better. It isn't life great and or terrible.
Yeah, we just got a round of buffs and nerfs for Overwatch, and it's very divisive, but
Yep,
Buffs and nerfs.
I'm-
Is that a good name for a podcast?
PNNs.
it's okay.
But something that they added in
Not that good.
this recent PUBG update that I think everyone will love, they added a fly sports car.
Nice.
So now, there are 2 maps in the game. There's like a foresty map, and then there's like a desert map, and everyone hates the desert map. But they added the sports car to the desert map. So now you want to play the desert map just to drive around with your boys. It's got like fuzzy dice hanging from the mirror.
That's awesome.
Hell
yeah.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But it's cool. You drive around. It's really loud, so everyone sees you and
Right.
hears you.
You crash
They shoot
immediately
You
and-
crash because it's fast. But you're like James Dean, man. You got a gun.
You James Dean.
But yeah, I've been playing PUBG.
with your bros.
Kind of the usual. Played a game of Evolution with actually both of you guys recently. Which
Oh, that's true. We did.
I hadn't played Evolution in a while. I forgot how fun that game is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time. I like eating some plants.
Eating plants, yeah.
That was the first game that I've played that was a print and play. And y'all are into the board games, and I love me board games, but I have not printed nor played a print and play before. So that was cool. You did a great job, Scott.
Thank you.
Laminating those components and putting them on some cool backs. And but yeah, that game was super fun, and I really liked the idea of the print and play because it helps facilitate the distribution of what is otherwise a great game for a small publisher who maybe can't distribute it very easily.
Yeah, so Evolution Climate it was a Kickstarter game, which I don't know if Evolution was. I want to say it was, but at the very least, the game we played, Evolution Climate, it was a Kickstarter game, and it is available at retail now. But as part of it, they also made an official print and play, which, like you said, Graham, for a small publisher, that's great.
Yeah.
Because normally the game is $60, and the print and play, I want to say I spent $15 on, and then the components for printing. I mean, I had a printer, I had paper, I had a laminator already.
Yeah.
So that was just the materials cost, which was, pennies on the dollar.
Right.
And I wish more companies would kind of back print and plays.
Yeah, I've been interested in a few print and plays recently, but the big one that I've been interested in is the Avalon Hill Civilization from 1982.
That hot new property.
That hot new property. About as old as Fallout 4.
Yeah, and Stardew Valley.
And Stardew Valley.
Not PUBG, though.
Not PUBG. PUBG is a little newer. Civilization is out of print, although a British company just put out a newer edition of it. But the expansion for it is long out of print and retails for like $200. By retails, I mean sells for on
Aftermarket.
eBay.
Yeah.
But I've been interested in playing it. I'll probably never realistically play it because it is like an all-day affair and it thrives with like 5 or 6 people. So I'm looking at 2 people right now who I think would play it.
Yes,
And then
that's
I'm
true.
capped out.
And then that's all.
Right.
That's all. I mean, we learned
Talking
Twilight
about my
Imperium.
cats. I'm looking at. Who are you looking at?
You and
me.
Graham.
Graham.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Maybe your cats too.
One.
Oliver
two,
would
that's
love
2
to
of
play
us.
Civilization.
That's 2 of us.
But a stranger on Reddit, when I was asking for print play tips,
Wants to play
said,
with you.
"Oh, do you want a copy of Civilization? I will donate a copy to you." And I said, "Yeah." So he shipped it to me. It's supposed to get here later today, but the USPS website said that it's currently in Puerto Rico, which is questionable if it will get here today.
Questionable.
Shipping from Oklahoma to Chicago by way of Puerto Rico.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've played logistics games before, and that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, checks out.
So,
Right. Puerto Rico is a
cool.
good game.
I never played it.
Haven't played it
So,
either.
I'm gonna borrow it from my friend now. We'll use it at our board game night.
I like that borrowed. I like that you started off saying like I'm gonna bring it to board game night is where
Right.
my head was going.
Yeah.
And then it went I'm gonna borrow it from a friend, and you're not gonna bring your friend to board game night.
No.
Heavens no.
You're gonna borrow the game from him to play with other people, not him
Yes,
though.
that's right.
It's,
Yes.
you cannot be more clear on that.
No.
not with your
Drawing
friend.
a line in the sand.
Right. Don't mix the friend groups.
Yeah. Worlds colliding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to play Civ, and I am confident we will get a game in at some point.
Yeah. I think we can cobble together 5.
2 more people,
Yeah.
maybe 3. I can think of one other person, at least one other
We'd
person.
probably bully Mike into it, and
Yeah, Mike, you're not here right now. I think you're probably in the air, though you left super early today.
they left at like 6.
So you're
Where's
probably
he
not in
flying
the
to?
air. What's that?
Where's he flying to?
Virginia.
Virginia.
I mean, it's fine.
I think he's at a wedding.
so disgusted about that Virginia comment.
Cool. Yeah. I'm glad we continue the trend of not playing games that have come out recently. No one here played God of War?
Nope.
No?
I am hearing good things,
I hear good things too.
but
I don't have a
I haven't
PlayStation,
played
so
I intend to play it at some point. I'm probably gonna borrow it from Tyler when he finishes. But
I actually never played God of War 3 because I don't think I ever finished God of War 2 because it just got so frustrated. And I know that I don't have to play those games to play this one because it's supposed to be notably different, but I don't know. The franchise lost it for me, you know? I'm just
Yeah.
disenchanted with the IP.
Well, Graham, you, from what I understand, you are not disenchanted with Star Wars, right? You're a big fan?
I'm a fan. Yeah, that's right.
You're a big fan. Do you ever play X-Wing?
I have played it only once.
Okay, well, you might want to get ready to play it twice
What?
because Fantasy Flight recently announced X-Wing Miniatures 2.0.
2.0, like a second edition?
Oh, like a second edition.
Interesting. So it's like but they've got like 60 ships for the
They
first
have a
edition.
bunch, yeah.
Oh, I am not into the competitive part of that, but I'm assuming that this revision, this second edition, is coming out of some sort of balance issues or core mechanics.
I don't
issues.
know. I don't know. So I haven't played X-Wing, but I have friends that do. And I know it's one of Fantasy Flight's more popular games. X-Wing, I feel like it came out a few years ago, and I keep forgetting about it until, like, I have friends of mine that just go, like, crazy over it.
Yeah.
Every time they're like, hey, you want to learn how to play X-Wing?
Sure.
Shane has tried to get me into X-Wing on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
And he and I have played it like once or twice. It seems cool. It seems like a cool, kind of easy to get into miniatures game. You don't have to assemble things. You don't have to paint things.
Right. All the miniatures come pre-built, and then they've got the shifty slider bases.
Yeah, the little
like
bases.
Hero Clicks style type thing where you can kind of keep track of your stats.
So what the second edition is doing, so it does sort of allow you to bring in your old stuff, but you need an upgrade set to do it. So you have to spend money to bring the stuff you currently have up to date, which on one hand, if I was a player that had a big collection, I'd probably feel a little salty about my stuff suddenly being invalidated.
Right.
You can look at something like Magic the Gathering, which
Sure.
officially speaking, you know, there's cutoffs for what sets are tournament legal.
Right.
But if you're just playing with buds, you could mix whatever you want together.
Sure.
And play. They all have the same backs. They're all compatible. You know, similar terms. It sounds like X-Wing 2 and original X-Wing won't be compatible in that way.
Yeah.
But they, on the other hand, they at least are offering people the chance to bring their stuff in for a cost. And I think it sounds like they're going to release, it's like one upgrade pack that maybe has revised cards for every ship out there. So it's not like you have to buy an individual.
Okay.
It's not like I have Slave 1, so I need the Slave 1 upgrade pack. I think you just get a pack of upgrade cards.
That's cool.
And that's it.
They might do it by faction, because
Sure.
if you play, like, if I'm an Imperial player and all my ships are Imperial, then you'll just buy the Imperial pack. If
Sure.
you are a completionist and you bought everything, you'll buy all 3 upgrade packs for
Right.
the
Right.
3 factions.
The other thing they're doing so how do you guys feel about apps in board games in general? Have you guys ever used apps for board games? When I say apps, I don't mean like scorekeeper apps that third parties have made. I mean like XCOM. XCOM requires an app to play. I know other games require apps to play on your phone. How do you guys feel about those?
So I have never played any game that requires an app, but I'm very suspicious of it because then I feel like I am leasing the game. If I want to go back to play, if I buy XCOM and I want to play XCOM in 10 years, is that app still going to be supported? Am I going to be able to get it anywhere?
Totally.
Yeah, that's a
And that sucks. Like, I hate that idea.
I mean, we're talking now about playing Avalon Hill's Civilization from 35 years ago,
Right.
36 years ago.
Yeah.
Is the XCOM app going to exist in 30 years?
Right.
Right?
So I guess it's not the end of the world if that happens, but I'm skeptical of buying anything that requires that app because I would want, I'm sure someone will come out with like a third party program that does the same thing, but
Duplicates that function.
I am crazy skeptical about that sort of thing because I want to be able to buy something and play it whenever, indefinitely.
Right.
So,
What if you go on vacation somewhere and you and your wife or your husband want to play X-Wing together? Because X-Wing is a 2-player game, largely.
Right.
And you go somewhere, maybe you don't have cell reception.
Right.
And you're like, oh, I forgot to download the app before we left. Oh, well, I guess we can't play this now.
So X-Wing requires an app then.
X-Wing 2.0
Okay.
requires an app.
Yes.
That's a big part. They're taking a lot of the stats off of the physical components.
Sure.
and they're putting them entirely in apps. So
Right.
you have to have your fleet input into the app. And
Yeah.
their reasoning for that, which I think is kind of cool, it's sort of starting to meld the like video game world with the board game world. What they want to do is be able to offer balance changes or updates, or if they come out with new like abilities for ships, they want to be able to add those abilities to existing ship models. So you can say, oh, we came up with a different type of X-wing that can do this thing, and we want to retrofit all of the old X-wings with that. Instead of saying, just remember that it's on these cards, or we're going to offer an update pack that you can buy, they'll just change the app.
Right.
And so now these guys have this thing. Or someone says, yo, the Millennium Falcon is really overpowered. That, like, let's just ban it from tournaments.
Right.
You know, they can say, oh, okay, we hear that you saying it's too strong. We lowered its movement value by 2 or something. Right.
Right. Or at least adjust the cost.
Or adjust the cost.
Or maybe if there's like a pilot that is normally good and fine, but then if you put them in a specific ship, there's too much synergy there, right? So, you know, maybe they can say like, okay, this pilot normally costs, I don't know, 3 super bucks, whatever they're called.
Yep. That's the Star Wars currency.
That's right.
Super bucks. But if you put him in this ship, he's actually going to cost 5. So you can help compensate for that synergy. They can do that and program it in. And so then when you're putting together your list, it's got like this live update.
Totally. You don't have to remember to factor in that extra cost.
Yeah.
So that side of things seems super nice to me. Like I said, I'm skeptical about a game requiring it, but I think that sort of live patching is nice. That's something I really enjoy about the mod for Twilight Imperium we play, is that it just updates it on tabletop sims. There's new content as it goes. I like playing as the Blizzix, and they've changed, like, sort of functionally what they do a few times.
Or like the Barony of Letnev too is one.
Right.
On their Discord, they have a thing called like dev_Letnev, and where they're talking about like sweeping changes they're trying to make to them.
Which is good. I think their thing is everything should have its own very unique flavor. So it's cool that they can roll that out for a game, and it's not, oh, this is Twilight Imperium Shattered Ascension version, 5 or whatever. They can patch it like they would patch a video game.
Right.
That's an advantage of a competitive game like Hearthstone, where it's a card game, but it's all digital, and so then they can just change the cards whenever they want, however they see fit.
So yeah, X-Wing is going down that path. X-Wing 2. X-Wing sold by the boatload. And
It's the number 1 miniatures game in the world.
No kidding.
Yeah, it beat out Warhammer 40k last year.
Wow. Well, I'm sure X-Wing 2.0 will do well.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, none of us here play it actively, at least. But I think it's such a big name in miniatures, obviously, and it's a big licensed game. I thought it was worth bringing up.
Yeah.
And we talked about it before briefly, or got mentioned, but God of War came out recently.
Yeah.
And God of War is kind of breaking records.
Really?
For Sony.
It is.
It is the fastest selling PS4 exclusive that they've put out. And like it is a lot of publications are talking about it, a lot of people are talking about it, which is surprising because God of War has always been a little big for Sony. It's been a banner franchise, but I feel like this is just exceeding expectations.
So I think that part of it, here's my speculations without having played it. The series has always been dumb, as someone who's played the first one and a bit of the second and the third. It's really over the top. I think a lot of the selling points for God of Wars 1 through 3 is excessive violence. There's boobs.
I love boobs.
There's all that.
Boobs at a time where boobs in video games was not much of a
norm,
thing. I
right.
mean, now we got Witcher 3, so we got all the boobs that you could ever want.
Are there boobs in Witcher 3? I've only played the beginning of the game, and then I yelled at some people in a swamp.
First of all, you need to leave and go play that game right now because it's one of the greatest games ever made. And secondly, tons of boobs.
All right.
Are there women in the game? If so, then you will see their boobs.
Okay.
That's not true.
So, like,
but a
very
little bit true.
very Game of Thronesy.
Yes,
in that regard.
very Game of Thronesy.
It's been on my Steam list for like a long time, but I just never buy it when it goes on sale. And It goes on sale all the time. So,
Well, so that actually ties in. Bringing up Witcher 3 is kind of a good point here, because what I'm kind of curious about with this God of War success, you've been hearing a lot in recent years, maybe like a year, maybe last year, from companies like EA and Activision, big publishers,
Yeah.
talking about how single player games are not a priority for them. Single player games don't sell as well. Single player games are not, what they're looking to do as a company. And then you have a game like God of War, Witcher 3 also, single player game that critically did very, very well.
Right.
What do you think that means for single player titles? With comments in the last year and a half being big publishers backing away from single players, to Sony really backing this big single player game. And it does incredibly well for them. Do you think that's going to revive big single player games at all? Because like you look at some games like The Last of Us, which was a big single player game,
Right.
has multiplayer in it. Like a lot of single player games were getting multiplayer tacked on, and then over time even shifting a little bit. Like when Gears of War came out, 2006 or whenever it was, that was being pushed as a single player game. The multiplayer caught on, and for 2 and 3 and the successive games, multiplayer became kind of the appeal for that series.
right, and that's been like the sort of trend with the Call of Duty games, I think, is that they're, at this point, multiplayer games with a campaign tacked on. But I don't think they started that way.
No, certainly not.
To me, that's like the old StarCraft model, right? Like you originally bought StarCraft, and you're like, "Cool, there's a
For
campaign.
the campaign, yeah.
But then you play through most of the campaign or whatever, and you're like, "Wait, there's a multiplayer on this thing called Battle.net," and of course, that is the thing that made StarCraft such a huge game, was the multiplayer aspect.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't think single player is going anywhere. I think that if you look at like what the most popular games are of any given year, I think a lot of them are going to be single player experiences, or like, I don't think the critically acclaimed games of any given year are your primarily multiplayer games. I think that big companies have a ton of success with titles like, like Madden, or like any given sports game where the functionality is multiplayer. It's a multiplayer game. You have Fortnite is really popular right now.
Goodness. Fortnite's huge.
PUBG is huge. Overwatch is big. So you
Dota,
certainly,
Counter-Strike.
yeah. I
all
mean,
your
you
MOBAs,
certainly
yeah.
have plenty of games that have what they deliver is, this is a multiplayer game. And I think those end up being more popular and have more longevity than something that's like a hybrid, something that's trying to say, oh, well, you can play through, I don't know, you can play through Call of Duty and then you can do the multiplayer. Because I think you have people who are just saying, I'm never touching the campaign in this game. I just want to team up with my buddies and shoot some guys. Yeah, I don't think single player. I don't know if like God of War's success or The Witcher's success is an anomaly. I don't know that is like a sign that single player's coming back, but
I just worry that, because I love single player games.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I know I just said a bit ago PUBG is my go-to game, but single player games tend to be the ones that really stick with me. And like, yeah, it's great that God of War is doing well, that Witcher did well, but like, man, Dota makes money. Like,
Right.
Fortnite is a free-to-play game, but that game makes money. PUBG is not free-to-play. It costs $30, and before Fortnite, it was the most popular game going.
right.
And so you don't get that kind of money, or like again, that kind of retention with single player games, which has always been kind of that's been the fear in recent years.
Yeah.
And so with God of War being such a big franchise, and it's being backed by such a big publisher like Sony,
Yeah.
and it's doing super well, I think you might start seeing big companies get back into single player. A big one,
That'd be cool.
we keep coming back to Star Wars. There was that Star Wars 1313. I don't know if you guys recall that being unveiled maybe 5 years ago
Yeah.
at this point.
Okay.
It was like an M-rated, gritty Star Wars single-player game.
Well,
that got canned. And people were salty about that. And that was around the time when EA started to really, say multiplayer is kind of our game right now. And people kind of cited 1313 as being their shift into multiplayer,
Sure.
full on, saying they had this game that people were excited about, and then multiplayer took off as a moneymaker for a company, and they axed their single-player only Star Wars game. Star Wars Battlefront came out, no single-player content. People were mad about it because the old games had
Right.
single-player content.
Yeah, I loved the old Battlefront games, and
Like Galactic Conquest or whatever the single-player was called in that.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I thought it was cool that it like sort of took you through the story or whatever, and it was fun to play. They had good local multiplayer too, and yeah, I haven't played Battlefront 2 at all, but the new Battlefront feels like Star Wars, but it doesn't feel like Star Wars Battlefront.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right,
But-
it does, certainly. But yeah, I wanted to mention God of War's recent success.
Yeah. I think
I think we all like single-player games.
Yeah.
I think single player games will still prove to do well, but they will have to be pretty much universally liked, if that makes sense, universally appealing. So The Witcher 3 is maybe universally appealing to anyone who likes to play RPGs or likes high fantasy. And God of War is appealing to anyone who likes fights, grinds, the old God of War franchise, or just these like sort of arcade style beat 'em up type things. I don't think you're going to see really innovative one-player games very often. Like The Last of Us, to me, felt very unique, and it stands out on its own, and I don't think we're going to see a lot of those. Heavy Rain, same thing. I don't think we're going to see a lot of those unless that particular IP gains a lot of momentum. And then they can sell it as, like, this is part of the Last of Us franchise, and this is part of the Uncharted franchise. Okay, well, you got a bunch of people who like Uncharted, and so they're going to buy it. But unless you get to that kind of status, then, I don't think single players will still do well, because they just don't have the hobby appeal, right? Like PUBG, for you, Scott, is sort of a hobby game because it's something you can keep up with, and if they make modifications to it and throw in sports cards, you know about it, that's cool, and you can talk about it, and you just don't get that with single players. So
Single-player games cost money, too, because you need voice acting, you need scripts,
Right.
you need a bunch of set pieces. PUBG, not to say PUBG doesn't cost money, but it's a map, and then you have players fall into it and shoot each other.
Right.
There's no plot. You need to have a writer
Well,
put together.
and even like, even something like Grand Theft Auto 5 had an insanely popular multiplayer.
It still does.
It still does. That game was really expensive to make. One of the most expensive games ever
I
made.
think it is
Maybe
the
the
most
most
expensive.
expensive game, like a budget of like 250 million or something.
I want to say more than
Yeah.
that. I think after marketing, it was like $500 million
Yeah,
or something like that.
Like
something
that's
crazy.
nuts, but it's made more than that. Certainly.
It made
right.
it made its money back within like 2 days or
Right.
something.
Exactly. So.
And that was years ago, and there are still people playing
Right.
it.
So if multiplayer is how you make that much money, then I see no reason. Like, if I were a developer, why would you make that an only single player game? But
So Graham's shown me about $265 million is what it cost to make. I don't know if that's before marketing, because they marketed the hell out
Yeah.
of Grand Theft Auto. But yeah, so $300 million to make
Right.
that game. Yeah, I'm going to be curious to see how God of War does for Sony a year from now.
right.
Is it something that people are going to look back on and say, yeah, that was a financially viable game for Sony to do? Or does it come back as Sony saying, we made money on this, but not as much as, EA made on Battlefront, or not as
Right.
much as Valve makes on Dota, or, Bluehole makes on PUBG. But we'll see. And that's going to lead us into our topic of the day, which is licensed games. Now, God of War, not a licensed property, but Star Wars is, as we've been talking about
Yeah.
kind of in every point here. And licensed games are super divisive. I feel like they've gotten a lot better in recent years, but still not always good. And I have some opinions on licensed games. I would say friends of mine also all have, whether they vocalize them or not, have opinions on licensed games. And I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts in general here. So let's start on, I mean, we all kind of know that licensed games aren't good usually.
Sure.
That is sort of the prevailing feeling, is that licensed games suck, right?
Right.
Do you guys agree with that? Jimmy, what do you think?
No, because I can think of better examples than this, but the example that sort of... I think I was on the licensed games suck train for a long time, because usually it's just, you know, like... I think in the Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo era, you had a lot of licensed games that were just sort of like painting, you know, Spider-Man over Streets of Rage, and then you have Maximum Carnage. And that's not good. But I think the thing that like shut me up was playing Arkham Asylum. It is, I think, an excellent game. It feels very Batman-y, so it like captures the vibe of I'm playing as Batman right now. It captures the world really well, and overwhelmingly does not suck. There are a couple tedious parts, but you know, it's like it's a good game. It ends up being great. I haven't played any of the other Arkham games, but I'm not a huge Batman fan, but I like Batman enough to play that game. I also like Metroidvania type games, and that one is that. So, and then I think that like I've mentioned before, I'm a big fan of the Telltale games, and they almost exclusively do licensed games.
Yeah, a lot of what they put out.
So I really enjoyed The Walking Dead. I really enjoyed their Tales from the Borderlands, which is interesting because it's a licensed game of a different video game. I've liked most of what they put out. I enjoyed their Batman game. I haven't played anything that's like an original property of theirs. Only licensed games, and I've enjoyed most of them. So I think we are in a new era of licensed games not sucking.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you're a kid, when we were kids, let me put it this way, back in the day, when you saw a video game or a board game that had the branding of some other IP, you sort of intuited, even at that young age, that like, okay, this is a product that they're trying to sell by slapping this brand on it. And that means that the IP, the licensing, is just there to help sell the game, which means that the game is not going to be good on its own merits. And I think that's where we got that stigma that you were talking about, Scott, of licensed games suck. So the delightful surprise when I was a kid was finding a game that was actually pretty good. So like I had a Lost World Jurassic Park board game, and it was pretty shit. And there were like some raptors that showed up, and so then you had to like evacuate and get to the Jeep, and like it was sort of thematic, but I don't remember it being a spectacular game. It was just kind of thematically cool. But then I had a Lost World Jurassic Park Sega Genesis game, and I played the crap out of that. Every sequence was exciting. All of the bosses were in like this 3D over-the-shoulder kind of thing, which was really interesting for Sega Genesis. Like one of the first bosses, you're like on a motorcycle going through the forest, and trees are coming at you, and you gotta shoot raptors and stuff, and it's really cool.
It was a good game. I also had
Yeah, it was really good, right? So now I think as time has gone on, it's harder and harder to sell, like to create a new video game IP. Like we're not going to see another Mario or another Zelda, I don't think. We're not going to see another Donkey Kong. We're not going to see another God of War. Hopefully I am wrong, but I just think if you're a company and you're investing a ton of money into developing a game, board or video game, and you have the option to try to do something risky with it or to sell it with an IP on the box, like that's already proven, like you're going to do that.
It's got a built-in audience.
It's got the built-in audience. It's a lot lower risk because you're guaranteed to sell it to diehard fans.
Right. And I mean, we see that a lot with movies today too. That's a different topic for a different podcast. But
Sure.
There's this idea that like if you want to remake something or do a sequel for something, that's much safer than
Right.
That a new thing.
and even if you like repackage it, like all of the Final Fantasy games are different, right?
Right.
Like they're
The
all
same characters. Right, right.
yeah, they're all different settings. They're all mechanically different, other than having like those same RPG elements. But like, if you are saying, "Oh, I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy X's Sphere Grid, so I'm going to play Final Fantasy 12," well, you're in for a surprise because they don't have that. But if they called each one of them a different thing, they wouldn't sell as well. But they've got that seal of approval of saying, this is Final Fantasy 15.
Right.
Right. Right.
So it's more like the branding of sort of the company
Right.
and the genre than it is the IP of the game.
Yeah,
itself.
exactly. Right.
So, well, you kind of mentioned it, Graham. You kind of let out a little bit, but like, what do you guys think is not good about licensed video games? Because you kind of said how you can just slap Alien onto a Hasbro board game box or a Milton Bradley board game box, and suddenly it's an Alien branded game. Is that bad? Like, is that something inherent to licensed games that isn't good, that you can start with a license and kind of not put full effort into making something that's good that you would have to for an original property?
I don't know what it is. Sometimes it feels a little bit soulless. If it looks too much like a marketing ploy, then I'm going to be turned off. If they secretly disguise it and it doesn't feel like it's just a blatant marketing maneuver, maybe I'll get over myself a little bit faster with it. But I think it can often kind of lack soul, or it maybe lacks depth. If I'm thinking like, this is the kind of game that I really like to play, and then someone else comes out with this IP that like is sort of like this game, then maybe I'll like it. I don't know. There was a Hunger Games board game that came out with the second movie, and it was like a worker placement, like legit game. And I played it twice, I think, and it was fine, like it was good. But if I'm looking for a worker placement game, like that was around the same time that maybe Viticulture came out. So, well, actually, this was several years before. But now, like, I would rather play Viticulture, which I know is a good game, as opposed to like maybe like a slightly less good version that's got the Hunger Games brand on it.
Sure, that makes sense. So it's easy, and I feel that way too. I feel like it's easy to get lazy on making something interesting or good when you have a license.
Yeah.
Because you have a built-in audience. You know that I can just put Hunger Games on this.
Right.
And I don't, like, Viticulture to some end needed to try to be good. If it was not good, it would hurt the company making it, hurt Stonemaier Games putting it out.
Sure.
Right, because then they're just publishing a bad game.
Right. Hunger Games, the people it's going to market to, it's not really going to hurt one way or the other.
Yeah, and I think you see that with. I know the second game got some critical acclaim, but the Godfather games from like I don't know, 8-9 years ago.
Talking the video games?
The video games, yeah. The first one was like a shameless Grand Theft Auto clone. The second one was 2. I played a bit of both of them. It's an open world crime game, which Grand Theft Auto does not have the market on. But all of the missions in the first game, at least, were like scenes from The Godfather, where you played as the character that you made or were assigned or whatever, who was like also there. So like some bad guys are coming to the hospital to kill everyone, and you happen to be there and you shoot them all. So it's like particularly soulless because it like detracts from the property that it is from, because it's not like, oh, this is in the Godfather universe. It's like, no, you're playing as a guy who's not in the only thing that this is based on.
Right.
And you're like solving the problems of it. I know there was that Scarface game where like it starts off with the end of Scarface, but then you live and then you like go do bad guy shit. And that's dumb. That's lazy.
Ghostbusters, they came out with a Ghostbusters game in like 2009 maybe that had all of the original characters there, and then your guy who was just like exactly like Godfather.
Right.
You're just tagging along with Venkman and all these people.
I'm Dr. Peter Venkman, and I'm Greg.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think your guy doesn't have a voice. It's like they brought, I think, as much as the original cast in as they could, and then your non-voiced character is like helping solve all the problems. And like that game was okay, but yeah, it certainly felt kind of soulless. It felt cheap. It felt cheap.
Yeah.
I think you can also get the opposite with licensed games. Like Graham, you were just saying that the Catching Fire worker placement game was okay.
Yeah.
So I hear that the Sons of Anarchy Men of Mayhem worker placement game is pretty good.
Sons of Anarchy, like a motorcycle game.
Yeah.
So it is made by the
Gale Force 9.
Gale Force 9, which is the same company that does Spartacus, the board game, which you've played and is good.
Oh, based off of the Stars TV show.
Yep.
Right.
So yeah, Gale Force 9 is kind of a banner of licensed games.
Right.
They
They have
only
some
put
other
out licensed
things.
game. They have let me see if I can. They have Spartacus, Sons of Anarchy, Firefly, Homeland. I think that's the
Okay.
name of it.
That is a show that exists.
Yeah, that's how it's
Homeland
I
with
couldn't
like
think,
Claire Danes.
Yeah,
Like
I
the
couldn't
political
think if it
intrigue
was
thing?
Homeland or Homefront. Homefront is the THQ video game.
Right.
Yeah, Homeland is what Gale Force 9 has.
What the heck?
I have sitting over there WWE Superstar Showdown. They have maybe one or two more, but they only do licensed games. And their games are shockingly good.
I have only played Superstar Showdown, which I like. It's very straightforward and simple, but like a fun minis game with wrestlers that I am unfamiliar with. And Spartacus is great. I love Spartacus. I don't know
The game.
The game.
Yeah, the game. I have
The
not
TV
watched the show.
Is very bad.
I hear it's bad. I have watched Sons of Anarchy, which is not a good show, but I have not played the game. I've also watched Firefly, but not played the game.
I hear Firefly is good. They've put out a bunch of expansions.
Yeah, I
Sons
have
of
heard
Anarchy.
good. I don't know anything about Homefront or Homeland,
Claire
the
Danes.
show
Claire
or
Danes.
the game.
What do you know about Claire Danes, though? Tell us
I
a
know
little
that
bit
she
about
is an
her.
actress.
Okay. Yep.
That's it.
You're there.
That's all
She's
I've
one
got.
of my celebrity crushes.
Okay. Graham
Alright.
Carlson.
So that's why I know that Claire Danes is on Homeland, because Claire Danes.
There you go. But
It's very obscure.
Superstar Showdown is great, and Spartacus is great. I feel like I would prefer both with a different theme. I would like Spartacus more if it was just like generic Roman themed, like gladiator themed.
Sorta is. I
It
mean,
sort
none of
is.
us are fans of the show, so it might as well be generic.
Right.
Roman
I just
themed.
I just sort of wish there was like different art and not
Sure.
like
Honestly,
screenshots.
like the
Screenshots
screenshot
are-
photos is like, it's a little bit weird. I'm so used to seeing just illustrations
It's
on board games, right?
very entertaining though when like you send out your dude to the arena and you read one of the quotes and it's like Thracian bitches must die. What is this show? Who is watching this?
Yeah,
And why
yeah.
is there a board game?
My dad and I watched the first season together, and it was not what I wanted to watch. It was supposed to be like 300, like the movie. It's supposed to be 300,
Right,
the TV
right.
show.
Right.
But in fact, it was
Yeah.
not.
Scott watched the first couple episodes and he was saying that there was a lot of like slow motion.
Yeah, tons of slow mo, tons of bad effects.
Yeah.
It's a rough show in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So part of the low quality of the source material is very entertaining for me when we play Spartacus, but I feel like I would prefer it with a different theme. I know there is an X-Men theme
There is
as well. like-
Mutant Revolution.
right. But I think I like Star's TV show that I never watched as a theme more than I like X-Men as a theme.
Okay, so that's another thing then. So, as licensed games in general, they have, maybe they're starting to shake their bad stigma, but are there licensed games or licensed properties, I should say, that you guys totally buy into the concept with? Dragon Ball Z, Jimmy, I know you and I have spoken
If
about.
Spartacus was Dragon Ball, if Spartacus was the Cell Games or the World Martial Arts Tournament from Dragon Ball Z, I would buy it even though you own Spartacus.
Yeah, I would buy it even though I own Spartacus.
there are certain properties that I think work really well and that I'm drawn to as a property. So I had an example earlier. Oh, Fallout.
Fallout.
There's a few different tabletop systems for it. I haven't played either, but I think the Fallout universe is very good. I think that the lore of it is good, and there's a lot of it packed in there, that it's not just, it's the apocalypse, but
It's a very specific brand.
it's a specific power of the apocalypse,
You got
if you will.
40s music and this,
Right.
sort of retro style to all the robots.
Right.
Goofy, but it's gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also, like, cool things that I like. So, like, the Enclave as bad guys, where they're, like, the remnants of the pre-war government and stuff like that. I think it's interesting.
So the Fallout franchise is
So the
something
Fallout
you would,
franchise.
different media kind of.
So I don't know that I would play the
inspiration.
Fallout board game that came out recently. I don't know anything about it, but I don't have like a desire to play it because I don't think that sort of like lore or any of the setting would shine through as much. But if I were going to play a post-apocalyptic tabletop setting, I would probably opt to do something in the Fallout universe over generic end of the world.
Right.
Um,
So if we were
It's a
going
known
to
quantity.
Right.
if we were going to do like a Genesis or a GURPS or some other sort of settingless role-playing game for
Right.
the tabletop.
yeah, I would want to use
you'd
like
be
the Fallout GURPS book or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Well, what about Kickstarter games then? Kickstarter board games have been huge.
Yeah. It's,
And a lot of them, I would say, almost any big success other than like your Gloomhaven or your Kingdom Death are licensed games. Dark Souls had a
Right.
successful Kickstarter. I want to say Fallout was a Kickstarter game. I could be wrong,
sounds right.
but I know Dark Souls was. I think it is either about to end or just ended the Street Fighter miniatures game. You get the Mega Man game, Evil Dead, and Terminator, which are never going to come out, which, that's a
That's
whole
a whole
other thing.
different thing.
But those were very successful Kickstarter in terms of how much money they made. Licensed board games on Kickstarter are giant, and
Yeah.
they make so much money. And from my perspective, they seem so lazy and so heartless.
well, it's a combination of different kinds of laziness, right? It's like I'm going to use Kickstarter not because not because I'm just a dude who's starting up his own game company, but because this is a way to ensure pre-orders on a site where people already look for board games that they can pre-order, combined with an IP that I don't have to design. And then
Right.
you're at this intersection of and now people will buy it because it is in the
Right.
right place with the right brand.
So I think that goes into that built-in audience. It was not a Kickstarter game, but the Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle deck building game
Yeah.
came out relatively recently. Was very popular because people like Harry Potter, and I like Harry Potter. It's an appealing idea for a game where you sort of play through the events of the books, but in deck building form. I'm not in a hurry to play it or anything, but I'm curious about it, and mostly that's because I like the source material.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of what you get, and some people are big fans of everything, so they're
What's up, Tyler?
what's up, Tyler? So, Scott, you were telling me that a buddy of yours backed the Thing board game and was...
I think I know right now 3 people that own the Thing board game that own almost no other board games.
Right. That is curious to me.
That's
that
wild.
people... I like the Thing, but...
Sure.
I don't know that I need to own that. But I think everyone has some properties that scratch that itch just enough where you say, oh, I'm really curious about this game, or I would without hearing any details about it, you would consider backing a Kickstarter for something. I think if they came out with an Earthbound board game, that Scott, you would probably consider backing it before you knew anything
I
about
would
it.
certainly consider it.
Right. Harvest Moon is great. It would be
Harvest
great.
Moon,
Great board
yeah.
game.
Yep, Ness goes and harvests some turnips.
Yep.
Yep.
Graham, if they came out with a going with video games, I know people enjoy. If they came out with a Dragon Age board game,
I'd be on that.
Right.
Like I legitimately want to play like the Dragon Age RPG with you guys, which is not the kind of RPG that you guys want to play. I'm gonna tell you that right now. But I would play that with you.
If they came out with a Persona tabletop game, I would probably back it. No question.
Yeah.
It feels a lot of times. It feels to me like licensed games, board games, or video games are marketing towards people not in the hobby.
I think so too. I think
if you're marketing a
Filthy casuals.
I mean, that's dramatic, but you're not wrong. Like they're saying, like I said, I have friends that don't play board games,
Right.
like at all, and they saw the Thing board game and were like, "Yeah, I need that," and bought it. Like they don't like board games. They have no real grasp initially on if that game is cool or not, because like they don't play games. They can't look at those mechanics and say, "Oh, that's similar to this other thing. That's similar to this thing."
right.
It's all they see is, oh, that's not, it has the Thing property, and you have to do blood tests like in the Thing, and some players are going to be secretly infected by the Thing like in the Thing. That's awesome. I'm going to buy that.
I think that's like the appeal of Street Fighter, right? Because like,
Yeah.
I don't know how it plays, but I don't know that you can replicate Street Fighter in a.
Sure. How do you
Board
replicate that kind of video game? Dark Souls. The Dark Souls game I have heard is nothing like the Dark
Right.
Souls video game. That it doesn't have the same tension. It doesn't have the same.
I mean,
like,
Dark
high
Souls
skill.
is a video game about twitchy combat and pattern recognition.
Right. It's a dexterity game.
So that doesn't translate into
Right,
a
how-
board
how
game
do you
mechanic.
Flick 'em
translate
up
that?
is closer to Dark Souls than Dark Souls.
Yeah. Just get a crokinole board
Right.
and have the wood painted up with the Dark Souls art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Praise the sun every time you flick a
Yep.
little.
Yeah, you shoot little dudes. Like you have to so at some point if you're translating a video game to a board game, I think it's harder because video games have built-in mechanics that you're expecting. Like you said, Street Fighter.
Right.
It has a fighting feel that is sort of identifiable to Street Fighter. Dark Souls has an identifiable gameplay system, and you can't translate video game mechanics to board games. It just doesn't work.
Right.
So you have to translate atmosphere or feel or
Sure.
the world, the lore. And with games like Street Fighter, that doesn't translate. Oh, now, I'm not to say the Street Fighter miniatures game is bad. I haven't played it. I've watched videos of it out of curiosity. It looks very simple. But it's the sort of thing that if you were to strip the Street Fighter license and just make it like dudes fighting, would you lose much? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe not.
Sure.
The mechanics don't seem like Street Fighter.
I think there's something about like what people like that is appealing with a license. I think that's one of the reasons that like okay, there are a billion versions of Monopoly.
Oh yeah, my goodness.
right.
Speaking of license,
So like, if you were to play
Dying.
Monopoly, would you rather play Monopoly or Green Bay Packers Monopoly?
right, sure.
You know,
Yeah, I mean, licensing as a whole, it almost feels predatory at times.
no, for sure.
Where you're saying, I have this thing, you didn't buy it when it was Super Mario Brothers themed. What about if it's Fallout themed?
Right.
You want it now? Okay. What about if it's Dragon Ball Z themed? You want it now? Check it out. We added a mechanic where you can go Super Saiyan, and that means you can't go to jail when you roll doubles. Isn't that cool? It's a different game now. You want it? Like-
That's what they did with the legendary deck building game because it was started out as Marvel's Legendary and it's got like a bunch of X-Men and Avengers and crap in there. But then there's, they came out with like Alien Legendary and Firefly Legendary.
Alien
Yeah.
Legendary. Like, what characters are an alien? You have Ripley. You have aliens.
You have
There's the cat.
There's
There's
Believe It or
the
Not.
cat.
There you
Ripley's,
go.
Ripley's
Yeah,
Believe It or
Ripley's
Not.
Believe It or Not.
Right.
So you can play the Believe It deck or the Not deck.
Yep.
Right.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. That's about it.
Licensing is something though that I really enjoy in Dice Masters.
Oh, sure.
I don't know what it would look like if it was not licensed stuff because I can't really picture it. I guess you'd have a bunch of like original dudes, and it would be. I feel like, again, part of the draw of licensed stuff is that you're familiar with it. So I know what Shredder is, and when I put him up against Thanos, it doesn't make sense, but I understand who those characters are, so I'm like I have a frame of reference for it. I don't go into it saying, hold on, I need to appreciate the
Right.
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles lore.
Right. You already care about the lore because you've been exposed to it.
Exactly. So it's an easy buy-in, but
Right. Which is something I like a lot about franchise games.
Well,
Licensed games.
I'm going to run down a list here because we kind of talked about some games we liked that are licensed games. Some things are cool, and I'm going to give you guys a chance to kind of just note a couple of licensed games that you're super into.
Cool.
But I'm just going to run down a few games here, and I want you guys to give me a quick take on how you feel about these. Okay. GoldenEye, Nintendo 64.
quality.
Like it.
Both like it. Okay. Personally, I don't think it holds up, but boy, did I love
That-
it.
that is
I-
certainly true.
I loved that game
Yeah.
back in the day. This is kind of a broader topic. Sports games.
Nope.
I don't watch sports. I don't play sports games. I like making really ugly guys in Fight Night. I don't know if Fight Night has real boxers
It
in it.
does.
Okay.
It does.
I like making really ugly guys.
That's kind of why I want to mention sports games, because for me, personally, I don't want to play unlicensed sports games if they're a real sport. If I'm going to play a football game, I want that NFL license. You know, I want to play as the Green Bay Packers. I don't want to play as the Madison Shippers. You
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
if I'm going to play wrestling games, I want to play as real wrestlers.
Right.
I love Fire Pro Wrestling. Fire Pro Wrestling has no license attached to it. But boy, does it have a customization system that lets you make real wrestlers.
Sure.
And of course, you're going to make all those real wrestlers. I don't want to play as fake Hulk Hogan. I want to play as Hulk Hogan.
Right.
So real sports, because you have like Video Ball, that is a sports game, ostensibly. Not a real sport, but football is a real sport. If I'm going to play football, I want that NFL license. That's an anomaly for me with sports games. I need that license. I
Right.
won't play it without.
Do you ever do like character creation
No.
in that? No.
No. I don't like. I mean, I know the newest Madden has like a story mode that I hear is very good, where you
Didn't-
play as a fictional person. But no,
You didn't play Spike Lee's story mode for
I did actually play a bit of it, and that was great for all the reasons that it shouldn't have been.
right.
But yeah, anyway, continuing on, we mentioned it already. I think I know how you feel. The Batman Arkham series.
I liked Arkham Asylum. I have not played the other ones.
Asylum was great. I didn't like City as much, but
You know,
certainly,
I did play a bit of the beginning of it. Actually, before I played Asylum, and I had been informed that I didn't need to know anything, which was sort of not true for the story. I had a lot of questions of like what is going on, but
okay,
I want to go back to it.
sure. I don't know if you guys have played this one. Kind of maybe a low-key licensed game. Chronicles of Riddick.
Haven't played it. Haven't seen any of the movies. I hear that the movies and the game are great.
You ever play Chronicles of Riddick?
I didn't know that there was a video game.
There is, and not only that,
Escape from
Butcher Bay. There's also Dark Athena, which is like a sort of sequel remake. Vin Diesel started a video game studio, to make that game.
What?
It's a first-person melee only, almost only game,
That's wild.
and it's great. It's so good.
Wow.
One of the weirdest licensed games there is, but it's great. Marvel fighting games. Now, I want to highlight fighting games specifically here because that's almost like a thing in and of itself. Marvel fighting games are like a genre that exists as that. Your Marvel superheroes, your Marvel versus Capcom being the big one.
I do like Marvel vs. Capcom a lot, but I think part of that is the same. Part of it is the same reason that like Super Smash Brothers is good, because it's a bunch of characters from other things and you're already familiar with them.
Right.
So it's not trying to. I don't know. There might be a story to Marvel vs. Capcom, but I think that it is just. What if you had Spider-Man, Captain America, and Jill Valentine from Resident Evil teaming up?
Yeah.
And I
Doesn't
think
make sense, but I love it.
Right. I also think that, I don't know, I like those games a lot.
Graham, you haven't really played them.
Well, it's a fighting game, which means that the last fighting game I played was like 2002. So, but in concept, I really like it.
That might have been when Marvel vs. Capcom. No, Capcom 2 came out in like '99. Okay, here's another broad one. Star Wars games. Now,
It's super broad.
super broad, and which is kind of my point here, because we talked about some of them that we like a lot. A lot of them are modern games,
Right.
Fantasy Flight's Star Wars games.
Right.
The old Battlefront got brought up, but there are a million Star Wars games.
That is true.
Super Nintendo games, arcade games.
I like the Star Wars arcade game. I think it's just Star Wars Arcade. That is mostly shoot at TIE fighters, but then there'll be like a portion when you're on Hoth, and it's like I guess it's all on-rail shooter, but you're shooting at stormtroopers or whatever.
The Star Wars. That's the Star Wars trilogy arcade game.
Yes. It's good. It's a good time.
I think Star Wars, over time, has done a really good job of, as sort of a quality level, like a commitment to excellence in terms of like their licensed products. For whatever reason, I would say most of the Star Wars games that I've played have been good on their own, even without the Star Wars license. And then the Star Wars license helps bring it to life. A good example might be Descent and Imperial Assault, because they're essentially the same game. I love Imperial Assault. It's because it's based on Descent, which was already a good game, but now you got Star Wars on top of it. So yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of FFG, and they've got the big Star Wars board gaming license. They're also the ones who did the Fallout board game earlier, which means it wasn't Kickstarted because they didn't do Kickstarters.
Okay,
but
that I wasn't sure about
Good
the
to know.
Fallout one.
Yeah, I had no idea.
But yeah, I think all of their Star Wars products are really good. FFG as a company is something I wanted to talk about, because that is they're like Gale Force, where like that's basically all they do is IPs, and either they license an IP or they try to make one of their own. They have a couple of those, but yeah, I think Star Wars has been successful in gaming because, in general, most of the Star Wars games that have ever been released are pretty good, even if they didn't have to do with Star Wars.
Yeah, I feel like Star Wars had its ups and downs, but in the last half decade, maybe decade even, they've really brought it together. Because they have so many bad Star Wars PC games from the 90s, a bunch of terrible Game Boy and portable games.
Dark Forces, amazing. TIE Fighter, super good.
Yoda Stories, maybe not the top.
Well, never heard of it. Knights of the Old Republic, Heroes popular.
Right, so like I'm saying, like roughly the last, I mean, now TIE Fighter is not decade, not as Dark Forces, but I think that they have really gotten their quality under control a little bit. Because also on PC games, you had a lot of shovelware like Star Wars Droid Factory. You had a lot of like little puzzly games that came out where they would just throw the Star Wars license on anything. I'm talking like
lots of like
prequel
movie
era.
tie-ins too.
The Star Wars Episode 1 game.
Right.
Awful. So bad.
Pod Racer,
Pod Racer was a lot of fun.
decent.
Pod Racer, the sequel, not very good.
There was a sequel to
There was. Came out on PS2.
Didn't know about it.
Okay. What about, Jimmy, you mentioned Telltale Adventure games. They do all licensed stuff.
Right. So I think that they do a great job of, like, they pick things that you, as the player, are familiar with. I don't know that many people are, like, going to pick up the Game of Thrones game that they do if they're like, I don't know what Game of Thrones is. Let's sit down and play this.
The Borderlands game, on the other hand.
That's true.
I know a lot of people that never played Borderlands that played Tales from the Borderlands.
Yeah, and I feel like there's something lost in the translation there probably, but they do a good job of catching you up, and they do a good job of presenting you with, like, you're not playing as the characters from 2.
I think that's key, because then you don't get that disjointed thing you were talking about with like The Godfather earlier, right?
Right. So, I most recently played their Batman game. It was free on PlayStation for PlayStation Plus a bit ago. And it was... I think everyone knows Batman, right? Like, you are familiar with Batman. You're familiar with, like, the tropes that you run into with those characters and stuff. So I think that they did some interesting things with that. They had... I'm like at a loss for what was interesting about it right now. But they took some of the characters that you were familiar with and made them like a little bit different. They introduced the Penguin like right away as like a revolutionary terrorist instead of like maybe the more common portrayal of him as like a fat guy.
Yeah.
So there were a few things like that that were interesting, and because the barrier to entry is really low because it's Batman, like they can do that. They can mess around with that sort of thing. So it's standalone. I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are there any licensed games that you guys especially love or especially hate that you would like to mention? Give you a second to think about while you're thinking. There is something that I do want to bring up. I feel as though the NES had a huge run of licensed games that were just knocked home runs, just amazing
Really?
games. The Disney games especially. I'd be remiss not to mention the Disney games on the NES that were so good.
Yeah.
DuckTales was great. Chippendale's Rescue Rangers was great. Tailspin was great. That Capcom, largely Capcom, put out all those games. And DuckTales especially, that 1 and 2. 2 is underrated. Stands up as just great games that are licensed. And kind of like what you were saying, Graham, that you can strip away that license and still have a good game underneath with a lot of Fantasy Flights games. Capcom did that for NES games. Whereas the DuckTales game is a great game. It's one of the best platformers on the NES, which is saying something when you have stuff like Super Mario Brothers,
Yeah.
Mega Man, Bionic Commando, like all kinds of great platformers. And this DuckTales game stands up with them.
Right.
And so, yeah, I feel like the NES is just killer in regards to licensed games.
There's that Super NES and Genesis Aladdin platformer that was
Oh, yeah.
really popular.
Yeah.
That one was solid.
I think the sort of interesting thing with those is that maybe unlike newer games, they're not trying to tell, like, I don't know, it's not like it's trying to be faithful to, like, Aladdin, the movie. You know what I mean? Other than, like, you play as Aladdin. But they're trying to build a good game and then sort of like a combo of a couple things we talked about. They're trying to, like, build a good game and slap Aladdin on it. Instead of, like, being faithful to the story or, like, making a piece of shit game and slapping Aladdin on it to sell. So then you end up with, like, oh yeah, it's the Aladdin game and it's cool because it's Aladdin, which you like, and it's a good game, which you also like.
Sure.
So I think that's interesting that it's like, it's not like a faithful retelling of Aladdin, but it is like, sort of. I don't know.
Yeah, when I think of stuff like that, I think of the Super Star Wars games that are just insane adaptations of Star Wars on the Super Nintendo, where at one point you have to fight, I think it's an Empire, you have to fight the carbon freezing room. That like you're Han Solo and you go down into this pit and the boss of the level is the room that will freeze him in carbonite. And it's this giant like machine that is like shooting jets out the sides of the screen and like doing all this crazy
That is
stuff.
insane.
So you are literally fighting the room that is gonna kill Han Solo. That game is off the rails in terms of like what is in it. They took every little thing they could find in Star Wars and made it into an enemy or a boss fight.
Wow.
It's crazy, but super like endearing because of that. All right, I'm gonna point at you and I want you to tell me your favorite licensed game. All right?
I mean, I gotta say Imperial Assault.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I'm gonna bring it up on every damn episode of this podcast, but like,
Sure.
I just think it's thematically really strong, and it's cool because it draws on a lot of the tropes from the universe of Star Wars.
Okay. Cool.
Oh gosh, me again. Oh man, I just had one.
Come on, Graham. Your favorite game. You just had it. You said Imperial Assault.
Yeah, I did.
You trying to go back on that now?
No, you're pointing at me again, so I have to think of something else, right?
It's your favorite game. I'm trying to consistency. I'm calling you out here.
Imperial Assault is,
All right.
I guess, still.
Okay.
Okay.
Times change fast.
Man, I had another one too, and I was trying to remember what it was, and then you
Okay.
pointed at me again.
All right.
Oh, you are the worst. Stop pointing at
All
me.
right. I'll
James.
jump in and I'll say I'm sitting next to the board for War of the Ring, and I think that it is an incredible licensed game. It is a Lord of the Rings war game, and I think that it does an excellent job of the tone of Lord of the Rings. The mechanics sort of reflect the despair of the setting. The bad guys get like 7 to 10 dice that they roll in a turn that lets them do a bunch of bad guy shit, and the good guys get 4 to 6, and they need to defend all their lands, and they need to move Frodo to Mount Doom, which is really bad. So it's like a brutal game for the good guys, and I think that like reflects the atmosphere of the books and of the movies, and or anything that you are familiar with Lord of the Rings. So it is very faithful in a lot of ways. A lot of the mechanics fit the theme very well. So I think overall it is a great experience of like playing the story.
Yep, War of the Ring is great. Great licensed game. Trespasser Jurassic Park.
And why is that?
Because it is the most important bad game ever made, and it is a bad game, but a great Jurassic Park property.
I'm so lost. How can it be bad but good?
Because the gameplay is not good, but they're kind of what they put into the Jurassic Park lore is top class. It's got narration from which one is the guy who plays John Hammond again? I forget which brother that is. Of
What?
you have the guy that narrates like the BBC documentaries.
Richard Attenborough.
Richard Attenborough. Yeah. It's got narration from Richard Attenborough.
Wow.
Of him reading. The game takes place after the events of the Lost World, just after the events of the Lost World, and it has got narration from Richard Attenborough reading his memoirs as John Hammond, who is like he's writing these things, presumably writing like a memoirs or a personal journal about him. Is going up to starting Jurassic Park to it failing to his downfall. And it's got him, it was written for the game, and it's got Richard Attenborough reading those at like points in the game as you're going across. So you come across like a genetic research like lab, and dialogue from him comes in that your character is like sort of out of body, like hearing and commenting on. And just the atmosphere and the Jurassic Park lore added in that game is like super good. So good, someone made an audiobook just out of that stuff. The game is crazy ambitious, and it falls on its face really hard.
But most of it is like manipulating physics.
Yeah,
right?
so it was one of the first 3D games to really bring like a fully physics-driven world to video games. It came out like a decade before Half-Life 2 came out, and it tried to do everything Half-Life 2 tried to do with physics. But the technology wasn't there. It was the first game to have procedural animation in a game, where the dinosaurs' animations aren't pre-programmed. They're all based on the dinosaurs' bodies and how they physically interact with the stuff around them. Kind of like Spore did years later. It has also, like Spore and many other games now, it had audio, like not pre-recorded audio clips for things. It would take into account, like, okay, this dinosaur's, like velociraptors have like a claw coming out the front. And when it steps on grass, it'll make this sort of sound. When it steps on metal, it'll make this sort of sound. And it like sort of like produces new sounds for that on the fly. So it's not just one noise constantly playing over and over. And different distances, and like mountains being high up will make it echoey. Not like it being a big open land will make it kind of flatter. It did tons and tons and tons of crazy stuff that nowadays is like standard in games. We talked about it last time. I think it's actually, that might have been the first game to do ragdoll physics. Trespasser is crazy, crazy innovative, but it fell on its face really hard.
Sure.
And so it's seen as being like a huge flop, and it was financially. But it is a great Jurassic Park game. And that is my favorite licensed game.
All right.
All right, now, how many of you remember the Phasing Players podcast theme song?
That's like Mike's song.
Phasing players.
phasing into each other all day. You guys have been listening to the Phasing Player Contract.
Mike would be so proud.